Hello, friends. It's nice to see you again. In this fourth lecture, we are going to see the principles of inquiry that is being followed in professional misconduct cases. But before I start, as usual, I wish to declare that I do not intend to stand for any election of the council or for a branch, as well as this forum will not be used for canvassing of any candidature for any election whatsoever. Now let us begin with the procedure that is being followed. As we have seen in the previous three lectures, action for professional misconduct cases can be initiated on the basis of complaint received in Form I from a person whom we call it complainant, or it can be commenced on the basis of information received from a particular person. However, the person giving the information must write his name, address. That means the rules provide that anonymous complaints will not be investigated or will not be entertained by the director discipline of the respective institutes. Obviously, this is to avoid sham complaints or complaints in the nature of harassing a professional. The institute suo motu can also commence the investigation or can direct the director discipline to investigate the matter against respondent professional on its own without getting any information or without getting any complaint. The law allows suo motu investigation by the institute. Now, when the complaint is received commonly or most of the times, the defense of the respondent is to prove that complainant is a bogus person, complainant is sham, or complainant himself is not trustworthy, or the behavior of the complainant or the conduct of the complainant is not up to the mark. It is immaterial for a professional to argue or to make his defense in this way. In a sense, if the respondent states that the complainant is not reliable, he has defrauded, or he has got huge unaccounted money, that is not the ground for the respondent to defend his case. The complainant's behavior, conduct is immaterial. We have seen as to the withdrawal of complaint in my previous lecture. A complaint can be withdrawn by the complainant and the director discipline will allow withdrawal before or after registration subject to concurrence by the Board of Discipline. If the Board of Discipline concurs, allows the withdrawal, the matter will get closed, or alternatively the Board of Discipline may direct director discipline to investigate the matter even if there is a withdrawal application made by the complainant. The Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee, we have seen, has authority to lay down the punishment under section 21A for a Board of Discipline, and Section 21B for the disciplinary committee. We have seen the powers of the Board of Discipline is A. reprimand, B. removal up to 3 months, and C. fine up to ₹1 lakh. And for the disciplinary committee under Section 21B, the punishment can be A. reprimand, B. removal for any period, and C. fine up to ₹5 lakhs. Now, these punishments can be given to a professional member and not to a professional firm. These three statutes, the Chartered Accountants Act, the Cost Accountants Act, Cost and Works Accountants Act, and the Company Secretaries Act, under these three statutes, only a member can be held guilty, not a partnership firm or a LLP in totality can be held guilty. So only individual member will be subject to reprimand or a removal, and not the entire or all the partners of the partnership firm or LLP. If the complainant does not attend the hearings before the Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee, or in other words, he remains absent or does not pursue the complaint, that will not absolve the respondent professional. That means the respondent cannot raise the issue that, see, the complainant is not attending it, so the matter needs to be closed. Now, in such situation, if the complainant does not attend or does not pursue the complaint, it does not matter. The institute will be in the shoes of the complainant and the proceedings will continue thereafter. So, non-persuasion by complainant will not absolve the respondent professional. Now, for how many years a respondent professional can be held guilty, can be investigated? Time is substantial. In a sense, a complaint can be filed within 7 years, I repeat, within 7 years by the complainant before the institute, that is director discipline. 7 years is a too longer period. That means every professional, to safeguard himself against any professional misconduct issues that may come up in future, must maintain his record for at least 7 to 8 years, if not 7, at least for 8 years, so that he can defend himself properly. This 7-year period limitation is given in Rule 12 of 2007 rules. So 7 years is quite a longer period. It is not 1 or 2 years, but 7 years, quite a long period. There are many such cases where the complainant has suffered financially, and therefore the respondent has made good the loss suffered by the complainant. Respondent has paid back the loss suffered by the complainant, and even he has paid over and above that as sort of compensation. And therefore complainant has agreed to withdraw the complaint. So far as professional misconduct cases are concerned, this will not serve the purpose of the respondent. That means payment of loss or compensation by the respondent will not close down the professional misconduct case initiated by the complainant, and the matter or the case will continue further. Even for this, A complainant, when he files a case, need not have to prove that he has suffered a loss on account of negligence by the respondent professional. I'll give an example where I had occasion to deal with. It was a pre-2006 case where a chartered accountant has done the valuation of shares of a private limited company, and one of the director of the company, on account of disputes between the directors, because disputes between the directors and the partners in a partnership firm, auditor is always a soft target. So in one case, the director has filed a complaint against an auditor in valuing the shares of a private company, and he has valued the shares at some X value, and the value was coming negative on the net asset basis. It was coming to actually minus 4 paise. The respondent professional chartered accountant gave a valuation certificate of 40 paise. And there were other issues also, accounting issues, which I could tackle satisfactorily. So at that time, the dismissal committee come to a conclusion that only explain why minus 4 value has become plus 40. So only on this issue, the committee has held the respondent professional chartered accountant guilty. At that time, I also argued that the shares were not actually transferred by the complainant, so he has not suffered a loss. The committee has told us, according to a particular decision, there is no need that a complainant should suffer a loss, and the matter went to the council as in the form of an appeal, because it was prior to 2006, the punishment part was by the council and not by the committee. Again, before the council, I had occasion to argue the case. There were 34 members present. It was more like a jury system. Considering the materiality aspect of it, the entire council held that respondent professional is not guilty, and that is how he was absolved. That means a particular complainant should suffer a loss to take his case before the institute is not necessary, is not required. The last one is rather unusual in a sense. There is no time limit fixed by the statute within how much period, within how many years the complaint received should be concluded. Now these principles are followed in practice. Now again, we have started with the appellate authority in last session. Who can go in appeal? If the committee or board of discipline holds a respondent professional guilty, he has a right to go in appeal before the appellate authority. If the disciplinary committee holds a member not guilty, then director discipline with the concurrence of the council can file an appeal against the conclusion drawn or against the conclusion arrived at by the disciplinary committee. This is something unique. The disciplinary committee cannot directly go to the appellate authority. He must be authorized by the council to go in appeal against the conclusion drawn by the board of discipline or a disciplinary committee, as the case may be. However, it is curious to note that a complainant cannot go in appeal with the appellate authority. In a sense, the disciplinary committee has held that a respondent is not guilty, to which obviously the complainant will not be happy with. And if he wants to go to the appellate authority, he cannot go to the appellate authority. Or the complainant wants that the respondent professional should lose his membership at least by 6 months, whereas the disciplinary committee has given removal only for 1 month. Therefore, he wants to enhance the punishment, and for that the complainant wants to go to the appellate authority. It is not allowed. Only a respondent chartered professional or a director discipline with the concurrence of the council can go in appeal to the appellate authority. The appellate authority has a constitution of 5 persons. The chairman or the presiding officer is a retired or a sitting judge of the High Court. Then 2 nominees of the respective institutes and 2 nominees of the central government having knowledge of law, economics, business, finance and accountancy. So there are 5 persons. So if the appeal is by a chartered accountant, then the composition will be the presiding officer being judge of a high court, 2 nominees of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and 2 central government nominees. If the cost accountant is before the appellate authority, then the composition will be the same presiding officer, judge of the High Court, 2 nominees of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, and 2 central government nominees. And if the respondent professional is approaching, company secretaries has appealed, then the composition will be the same judge of the High Court, 2 representatives of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, and 2 central government nominees. So depending upon the appellant, whether if chartered accountant or a cost accountant or a company secretaries, the 2 nominees of the institutes change, other 3 members are common. The place of authority is at Delhi. It is situated in the office of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, I think at Noida. Then appeal is to be preferred within 90 days from the receipt of order under section 21B3 from the disciplinary committee. 21B3 is a punishment provision. So when a professional receives a punishment, from that date within 90 days appeal is to be preferred. The appeal is to be preferred in form 3, and along with that a stay petition is also required to be made. In a sense, if you do not apply for a stay petition, the institute may remove the name of the member. In the meanwhile, then the basic purpose of making the appeal will be lost. So we filed the appeal, and simultaneously we also filed a stay petition staying the order of the Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee, as the case may be. The fees payable are 5,000 for appeal and 500 is for stay petition, to be payable to appellate authority at Delhi. The appellate authority can regulate its own procedure as per appellate authority into bracket procedure bracket complete rules 2011. Here, before the appellate authority, a representation can be made. That means the appellant can be represented by advocate, chartered accountant, cost accountant, or company secretaries. Now the powers of appellate authority are much wider compared to the disciplinary committee and the Board of Discipline. to which we'll go, and what is beyond appellate authority, that we'll also discuss in the next lecture. If you like this video lecture, pass it on to fellow professionals. If you want to communicate with me, you can email me on sharadvazeytc@gmail.com. Thank you very much.